There are stories buried deeper than any grave, stories the history books forgot, or perhaps chose to forget. When wars end, medals are handed out, names are carved into stone, and the rest is erased. But some memories refuse to die. They cling to blood, to soil, to the pages of journals that were never meant to be found. This is one of those stories. A forgotten diary from the Philippine-American War. A Marine's final account, written by shaking hands under the heat of a foreign sun. His words speak of something the government buried and the jungle kept alive. If you listen closely, you might still hear it, too. The crying of a child, somewhere in the dark. The first entry was dated March 3rd, 1901. I can still hear the baby crying. That was the first line. He wrote that their unit had been sent to a small village along the coast of Samar Island, one of those forgotten places swallowed by jungle and swamp. They'd arrived the previous day to fortify it against insurrectos, the Filipino guerrillas, who struck from the trees and vanished into the dark. At dawn, gunfire erupted. Bullets tore through the bamboo huts. The Marines scrambled to return fire. And when the smoke cleared, there was a sound no soldier could forget, a baby's scream. A native mother ran through the village carrying her child. The infant was bleeding from a torn arm, screaming in pain. Ford described it clearly. One arm gone. The blood spilled like someone had spilled red water into the dirt. Yet it cried louder than the rifles. No one could help. The wound was too deep, too jagged. The child bled out before the morning ended. The captain ordered a funeral to show goodwill toward the villagers, but the locals refused to let the Marines attend. The child's mother blamed them, said their presence had brought death into her home. That night, Ford wrote one more line. The baby was strong, maybe too strong. A few nights later, Ford was on picket duty. The jungle was silent, except for the buzz of mosquitoes. Then he heard something move just beyond the line, slow, deliberate, like someone stepping through the underbrush. He fired a warning shot. Shouts rose from the camp. Men scrambled for rifles, but no attack came. At dawn, they found a body near where he had fired. It wasn't a guerrilla. It was the woman, the mother of the dead child. Her body lay twisted in the mud, facing the direction of the village, as though she'd been crawling home. The earth around her hands was clawed up. Her feet were covered in dirt, her dress smeared with clay. And when the villagers came to identify her, someone noticed something worse. The grave of her baby was empty. Ford wrote. They said she had gone to the mountains, that she wanted to bury the child with her husband. But my friend said she looked like she was coming back, not going away. The grave was open and the child gone. I cannot shake the thought that she went to the jungle carrying death and came back without it. For days, nothing happened. No gunfire, no attacks, just heat flies and the endless weight of silence. Ford said even the insects seemed quieter than usual. The captain grew restless, ordering double patrols, convinced that the insurrectos were planning something. But the scouts found nothing. No tracks, no campfire ash, no sign of life in miles of jungle. Lieutenant Miller, a proud officer, eager for promotion, argued that the enemy was weak. He begged the captain to let him lead a search and destroy mission. Eventually, the captain agreed. Ford was assigned to Miller's platoon. They were to march inland, find the enemy's camp near a small stream, and wipe it out. He didn't want to go. He wrote, "I'd rather watch the villagers plant rice than march into that damn jungle. The silence out there feels wrong. like the air itself is waiting. They set out before dawn. The jungle closed around them, thick and heavy. The air clung to their skin like wet cloth. By noon, their uniforms were soaked in sweat. The guide, a native villager, forced to lead them, kept glancing into the trees, whispering prayers under his breath. The lieutenant mocked him until the man refused to go any farther. He pointed toward the mountains and said one word. Ford didn't understand Tiyanak. The lieutenant laughed. The man ran back toward the village. The platoon pressed on without him. Hours later, they reached the stream, a narrow vein of water cutting through rock and roots. And there by the bank, they found the first body, a dead gorilla. His stomach had been ripped open, intestines half-eaten. At first, they thought it was a wild animal, but there were no claw marks, just teeth. Small teeth. Human. Ford's handwriting shook on that page. Whatever did this didn't eat for hunger. It ate for pleasure. Following the stream, they found the enemy camp bamboo huts, supply crates, rifles scattered in the dirt. 30 bodies lay everywhere. Every one of them had been gutted open organs, chewed faces, shredded limbs, twisted. Flies buzzed like a storm above the corpses. Lieutenant Miller looked pale. The men were silent. They didn't know what they were looking at. Empty bullet casings covered the ground. The guerrillas had fought something and lost. But what kind of animal attacks armed men and leaves their weapons untouched? Ford wrote. The sergeant said it was a tiger. I've seen tiger wounds before. These weren't claws. These were hands. Then came the sound that froze them all, a baby crying. The sound came from the jungle ahead, high-pitched, desperate human. A baby's cry. Miller raised his rifle, scanning the trees. The sound grew louder, closer. The lieutenant smiled, seeing his chance for glory. He ordered a small group forward, leaving the others behind to guard the clearing. Ford followed him, the sergeant behind. They cut through vines and brush until they reached a small patch of open ground. There, lying on the dirt, was a baby. Naked, filthy, crying. Its right arm was gone. Ford froze. He knew that cry. He'd heard it in the village when the first shots were fired. He whispered, "Sir, that's the same child." But the lieutenant ignored him. He knelt, scooping the baby up in his arms. "Poor thing," he said. "We'll take you home." Then the crying stopped. Ford saw the skin on the child's face begin to move, like something crawling beneath it. The flesh blistered, split, and started to peel away, layer by layer. The lieutenant screamed. The baby's remaining arm twisted around his throat. Its nails dug into his neck. And when the skin fell away completely, it wasn't a baby anymore. It was a creature small, wrinkled with gray skin and long, thin claws. Its mouth stretched two white teeth like needles. Its eyes red dry, ancient, glowed in the shadows. Ford and the sergeant tried to pull it off, but the thing clung tight, biting deep into the lieutenant's throat. Blood gushed as it tore him open. When Ford finally ripped it free, he realized he was holding its shed skin, soft like wet paper. The creature turned and hissed, its face slick with blood. Then it leapt at him. Ford's rifle jammed. He swung it like a club, striking the creature aside. It hit a tree and shrieked. Then more cries filled the air. Not one baby, dozens, hundreds. He looked up. They were hanging from the branches, small shapes, skinless, and writhing eyes glowing red in the dark canopy. They dropped. Screams erupted all around. Men fired wildly into the trees. Muzzles flashed. Bodies fell. The jungle came alive with snarls and shrieks. Ford ran. He could hear the thing staring into flesh behind him, Men begging for help, choking, gurgling. He didn't stop, didn't look back. When he burst into the clearing, another platoon had just arrived. He collapsed, shaking, unable to speak. He was the only one left from Miller's squad. Ford woke up 2 days later in a bamboo hut used as a field hospital. His hands were bandaged, his body bruised, his mind fractured. The captain asked what happened. He told him everything: the camp, the crying baby, the creatures. The captain's expression didn't change. He said Ford was delirious, that his unit had been ambushed and mutilated by guerrillas as a message. The bodies were burned before he could see them again. 2 weeks later, he was declared unfit for duty and sent back to Cavite. He never rejoined his company. He drank himself numb until the war ended. The last entry in his diary read, "They said it was an ambush, but I know what I saw." The jungle doesn't forget. Sometimes at night, I still hear them crying. When I finished reading, I noticed the last page had a dark stain, old brown, like dried blood. I ran his name through military archives. No record of Lieutenant Miller. No mention of the patrol. Just a short note. Private Elias Ford, dishonorable discharge due to intoxication and mental unfitness. That was it. But here's what chills me the most. The village he described. It doesn't exist anymore. It was burned during the war, abandoned for decades. Last year, during a trip to the Philippines, I drove near the region mentioned in his notes. There's nothing there now but jungle. Still, I could swear I heard it faint, distant, echoing through the trees. A baby crying, soft, hungry, waiting. The official record says it was just a tragedy, an ambush, a fever, a man's mind breaking under war. But the jungle keeps its own truth. And sometimes truth doesn't rot. It waits. Maybe the diary was a confession. Maybe it was a warning. Or maybe it was never meant to be read at all. But if what he wrote was real, then something ancient and hungry still lives out there. And if you ever find yourself alone in the tropics, under a red moon, and hear a baby crying where no one should be, don't follow it. Don't look for it, because it already knows you're there.